Okay, so let's jump into something that's clearly causing a stir in Argentina these days.
Yeah. Public universities.
A pretty big deal.
Their funding.
Yeah.
And a whole lot of unrest surrounding it.
We're seeing a real clash, I think, when it comes to how people see education
Right.
and, government spending.
Yeah.
How those two things intersect. What role should they play in Argentina's future?
And we've got a stack of articles here from Se Pegó el Texto. It's like,
right.
If you want to know what's happening in Argentina, you go to Se Pegó el Texto for the hot takes.
It's the place to be.
And they are not holding back.
Yeah.
It's intense. We're talking thousands of people out in the streets.
Thousands.
Protesting, big names, getting involved. It's
interesting, too, because public universities in Argentina,
they're not just seen as a place to get a degree.
Right.
It's
a whole...
It's deeper than that.
It's like social mobility.
It's tied up with national identity.
Yeah.
So when people feel like those things are under threat, they react strongly.
And we are seeing some strong reactions. The articles are calling this the second federal university march.
The second one.
The second one.
In just a few months.
Just in a few months.
Yeah.
So this is
big.
This is not a small thing.
Students and faculty are really fired up about President Milei's decision to veto that budget increase for public universities.
Okay, so let's zero in on that veto for a second. Because we actually have excerpts here.
Yes.
From Milei's official statement.
Straight from the source.
Straight from the horse's mouth. Decree number 879.
8-79. There you go.
If you're keeping score.
Write that down.
And he does not hold back.
No, he doesn't mince words.
He calls this proposed budget increase an irresponsible project.
Yeah, strong words.
And then accuses lawmakers of populist demagoguery.
Ooh, that's a term.
Okay.
We should probably unpack that a little.
Populist demagoguery. What's he trying to do with that phrase?
It's all about framing, right?
Yeah.
He's using this term to suggest that anyone who supports this budget increase.
Okay.
They're not really thinking about sound financial decisions.
They just want
to score points.
They score points.
Political points.
He's saying they're playing politics.
Exactly. He wants to be seen as the responsible one.
The adult in the room.
The one saying, hold on, guys. We need to think about the long game here.
The long-term health of Argentina's economy.
Exactly.
But it's not just about the money, is it? This feels like a statement.
No, you're right.
About his whole approach.
It's a big...
to how things should be run.
It's philosophical.
Yeah.
He's a free market guy through and through.
Yeah.
Less government and everything.
So less government and education.
Let the market sort it out, he says.
So this veto.
Yeah.
It's about this specific budget.
Sure. On the surface.
But it's really signaling something much bigger.
This is a dog whistle.
Philosophical shift?
It's a shot across the bow. This is how he does things.
So what does that actually mean for universities?
Well,
if he gets his way?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's hard to say for sure right now.
Right.
But if he matches his policies to this rhetoric, we could be talking about big changes.
Big changes how they're funded, how they're run.
Big changes how they operate.
And people are very concerned.
Yeah.
Not just the students and faculty.
Students, faculty, and beyond.
Because the article actually quotes the president of the Argentine University Federation.
Okay.
Saying that public universities are fighting for survival.
Whoa.
Yeah, those are strong words.
Fighting for survival. That's not hyperbole.
Yeah.
That's real fear.
That's a statement.
It really speaks to this idea that in Milei's vision for Argentina, public universities,
maybe they don't have a place.
They're not a priority.
And they've been such a core part of their society.
For so long.
For so long.
Yeah.
And it's not just talk, right? Because we've got stories here from students and union leaders
on the ground
who were at the marches, and they're talking about how these cuts would directly impact their lives.
How could they not?
Their futures.
Their education, their opportunities.
Yeah, and it's interesting because it feels like this issue has brought together people from all over.
A diverse group, to say the least.
Because you see the pictures and you see the names.
Who's who?
Cristina Kirchner.
Big names.
Sergio Massa, even Elisa Carrillo is there.
Wow.
And those three...
Those three agree on...
They don't agree on anything.
Nothing. And they're all here.
And they're all united against Milei on this.
So it's not just the usual suspects?
No, this is different.
This has become a rallying point.
Across the political spectrum.
For people who are very concerned.
Very concerned about Milei's approach. So we're seeing this broad coalition forming against Milei's university funding cuts. But they're not all coming at it from the same angle, are they? What are some of the key arguments that are coming from the people pushing back?
Well, let's start with Cristina Kirchner.
Mm-hmm.
The article mentions her speaking from the balcony of the Patriot Institute.
Okay.
Which is pretty symbolic in itself.
Definitely.
And she really hammered home this idea that public universities are about opportunity.
Okay.
Opportunity for all Argentines. She even called herself a daughter and taxpayer of public, national, and free universities.
Interesting.
So she's drawing a direct line there.
Yeah.
Between her own success and the very system she's out there defending.
So for her, it's not just about the money.
It's bigger than that.
It's about a pathway.
It's about social mobility.
Yeah.
It's about a system that works.
Okay, so that's Kirchner. What about someone like Sergio Massa, though? He's more of a centrist figure, right?
Right, and Massa actually joined the march itself.
Oh, wow.
Which I think speaks volumes. He later tweeted about protecting the dreams of young people.
Okay.
So his argument is less about ideology and more about the practical impact of all of this. Like, what does this mean for Argentina's future? You can't have a thriving economy without an educated workforce. That's his whole point.
Okay, so Kirchner is focusing on social justice, Massa on the economic implications. What about those who disagree with them politically, like Elisa Carrió? Where does she fit into this?
Carrió's involvement is really interesting because she actually marched alongside the students and faculty.
Wow, okay.
She highlighted her 52 years in public education.
52 years, that's a statement.
That's a lifetime.
Yeah.
Her argument is interesting, though. It's less about defending how things are now.
Okay.
And more about what she sees as Milei's recklessness.
Interesting.
She's worried that he's dismantling important institutions without a real plan for what comes next.
Yeah, you can understand that concern, right? Like, what happens next?
It's a valid concern.
It seems like maybe Milei underestimated the pushback he'd get from literally everyone.
It seems that way.
Because even some folks within his own party are like, hold on a second.
They're voicing their concerns, too.
The article actually quotes Jorge Macri.
Okay.
And remember, he is the head of government of Buenos Aires.
Not a small position.
Not a small position at all.
Very important.
So he's critical of the protests.
He's not fully on board with the protests. But he also says he acknowledges how diverse the groups are who are actually participating.
So he's seeing it too. It's not just the usual suspects.
This is different.
This is resonating with a lot of people.
Across Argentina.
Which, by the way, reminds me, did you see Patricia Bullrich's response to all this?
The Minister of Security.
Yes.
Let me guess. She urged calm and encouraged thoughtful dialogue.
Not even close.
Oh, boy.
She called it pirapipi.
Pirapipi. Okay, for our listeners who maybe aren't fluent in Argentine slang.
Yeah, what does that even mean?
Help us out here.
It's basically like saying, this is nothing.
Oh, boy.
This is much ado about nothing. A big fuss over something insignificant.
Which is a dangerous way to characterize what is clearly a deeply felt concern for a lot of people. Dismissing their worries like that, that's not going to de-escalate anything.
Yeah. It feels like she's trying to downplay how important this is to people.
Minimize it.
But you see the pictures of the marches.
The crowds are huge.
Across the country. Thousands of people. This is not insignificant.
It's definitely significant.
And this isn't happening in a vacuum.
Right. We were talking earlier about how this budget veto is just one piece of this much larger agenda.
Right.
He's making moves on a bunch of different fronts.
Like, what's going on with Aerolíneas Argentinas? Because I know there were rumors.
Right.
But it sounds like it's getting real.
It's getting real. The article confirms that Milei just signed a decree opening the door to privatization.
Wow, that's a big deal.
That is huge. We're talking about a national symbol for some people.
So why do it? Why now? What's the reasoning?
Milei's argument is that privatization equals better service.
Okay.
Less burden on taxpayers.
Okay.
He's basically saying it hasn't been run efficiently under government control.
But isn't that a risky move politically? Privatizing something like Aerolíneas Argentinas?
It's going to ruffle some feathers.
That's putting it mildly right.
This is one of those moves.
It is a big deal.
It carries a lot of weight.
A lot of history.
A lot of emotion for Argentines.
Yeah.
Don't be surprised if this sparks just as much debate and pushback
as the university funding. Okay, so we've got potential upheaval in education, major changes to national industries, and then there's the Garrahan hospital situation.
Right.
What is going on there? I saw headlines about resignations, possible strikes.
This one's a little complicated. So the new health minister, Mario Lugones, He demanded that the entire administrative council of Garrahan Hospital resign.
The entire council?
The entire council.
Why?
Their offense. They approved bonuses for the hospital staff.
Wait, you're kidding? They're being asked to resign because they gave out bonuses.
That seems to be the case. And the union is understandably furious.
Yeah, I bet.
They're calling it a direct attack on workers' rights.
Okay.
They're threatening to strike if these council members are forced out.
So let me get this straight. Miley's going after university funding, pushing to privatize a major airline, and now there's this showdown at one of the country's most important hospitals. Is there a connection here? Is this all part of some master plan?
Well, it's probably too early to tell if it's some grand coordinated plan.
Okay.
But there's definitely a theme here.
What's the theme?
Miley's not afraid to shake things up.
He's not afraid of a little chaos.
He's challenging some deeply held beliefs about the role of government in Argentina.
It's interesting, though, that a lot of these moves, they seem to target sectors that are pretty fundamental to a functioning society, like education, healthcare, national infrastructure. It feels like a gamble.
It's definitely a bold approach.
Yeah.
It's definitely creating uncertainty. But remember, we also talked about some other things happening outside of Buenos Aires.
Right.
That add another layer to all of this.
Cordoba?
Cordoba.
Yeah.
They're really feeling the pressure right now.
In what way?
Well, for one, the university protests there.
Yeah.
Massive. Even bigger than the ones back in April.
Wow.
Clearly, Miley's policies are hitting a nerve there.
Yeah.
Just like in other parts of the country.
And it's not just the protests either, right?
No, you've got the wildfires.
The wildfires are still raging.
Still raging in Cordoba, causing even more hardship instability on top of everything else.
It's like a 1-2 punch.
It's a double whammy. Political and economic uncertainty in an environmental crisis.
It's like all these different threads are coming together at the worst possible time.
It's a perfect storm.
And speaking of unexpected convergences, there's that wild story about Evo Morales. This one, I have to admit, threw me for a loop.
The Evo Morales situation.
Yeah. It's almost too strange to believe.
It's a head-scratcher for sure.
So for those who don't remember, Evo Morales was granted asylum in Argentina back in 2019.
Right after that whole political crisis forced him out of Bolivia.
Right, but now it sounds like his time in Argentina might be coming to an end.
Well, not exactly. He's not being deported or anything.
Okay.
But the Milei government did revoke his refugee status.
Which is a pretty significant gesture.
It's symbolic, to say the least.
Yeah.
It's Milei drawing a line in the sand.
Right.
Distancing himself from the previous administration.
Saying that was then, this is now.
Exactly. New sheriff in town. And it's a reminder that Argentina's foreign policy is also in flux under Milei.
It's changing, too. He's sending a message about the kinds of relationships he wants to have on the world stage.
The alliances he wants to build or not build.
Okay, so let's recap. We've got protests, potential privatization, healthcare clashes, environmental crises, and now international intrigue with Evo Morales. It's a lot.
It's a lot. It really does paint a picture of a country in transition.
Transition is a good word.
Grappling with some big questions about its identity and its future. And let's not forget about Alicia Caballero's resignation.
Oh, right. That was a big deal. She was the president of Argentina's Agency for Research, Technological Development and Innovation. Brilliant scientist at the top of her field. What was her reasoning for stepping down?
Basically, she said that the government lacks the will to support science and technology.
Wow.
That they're not really committed to it.
So she felt like her work was being undermined.
That decisions were being made elsewhere that showed different priorities.
That's a huge loss for Argentina.
It is.
And it feels symbolic of this larger trend.
Under Milei.
Yeah, a shift away from investing in certain sectors.
Sectors that have traditionally been seen as crucial for progress.
Right, so it raises the question, what are Milei's priorities? Where does he see Argentina's future? And how does he plan to get there? Because right now it feels like a lot of uncertainty.
A lot of anxiety about what comes next.
So we've covered a lot of ground here. Protests, policy shifts, political maneuvering. It's a lot to keep track of.
It's a lot even for someone like me who follows this stuff all the time.
Right. So for someone who's maybe just tuning in now, what would you say is the headline here? What's the most important thing to understand about what's going on in Argentina right now?
Well, I think the big takeaway is that things are really uncertain right now. Milei's presidency is a big change from how things have been done in Argentina for a long time.
He's shaking things up.
He's definitely shaking things up. He's challenging some really fundamental assumptions about government, the economy, Argentina's place in the world, and those changes are having a ripple effect.
And not everyone's happy about it. We talked about the protests, the political opposition, even people resigning from important positions. Is it fair to say that Argentina is a little bit of a powder keg right now?
The article uses the word revolution, which is a strong word. It's always hard to predict these things, especially somewhere as complex as Argentina. But there's no doubt that tensions are high.
Yeah.
Milei's got this really aggressive reform agenda, and it's running headfirst into some very deeply entrenched interests and a population that's been through a lot economically.
Yeah, they've been through a lot.
Some's got to give.
It's like that saying, may you live in interesting times.
Right. Although I'm not sure everyone in Argentina would use the word interesting right now.
Probably not the word they would use. So as we try to make sense of all of this, what are some important things to keep in mind about Argentina in general?
Well, first off, Argentina is a country of paradoxes. It's incredibly wealthy.
Resources, natural resources.
Human capital.
Amazing.
And yet it struggles with poverty and inequality. Right.
It's got this incredibly rich intellectual and cultural history.
World class.
But it's also had a lot of political instability and economic mismanagement.
Yeah.
So you got to keep those contradictions in mind. They really shape how events play out.
It's like you need to understand the whole story.
A whole complicated story.
To make sense of any one part.
Exactly. The second thing to remember is that Argentina is constantly changing. What's true today might not be true tomorrow.
Right.
The political landscape is always shifting. Alliances are fluid.
You never know what's going to happen.
The only constant is change.
That's Argentina for you.
That is Argentina for you.
Yeah.
And finally, I think it's so important to remember that Argentina is a country of passionate people.
Absolutely.
They care deeply about their country and its future.
Yeah.
And they're not afraid to make their voices heard. Protests, art, music.
Debate.
They're not afraid to talk about it.
They love to talk about it.
So basically you're saying stay tuned.
Stay tuned. The story of Argentina is far from over.
It's just getting started.
And it's a story that deserves our attention.
It's a fascinating story. Well, on that note, we'll leave our listeners with this thought. Se pegó el texto uses the word revolution to describe what's going on in Argentina right now. Is that just dramatic word choice, or is something bigger brewing? We've given you the information. Now you decide.
Let us know what you think.
This has been The Deep Dive.
See you next time.
We'll see you next time.